Hello everyone, welcome back to my class. Today in our this video we are going to continue second chapter of history class 6. Like yesterday we have done until domestication, so we are going to start this new topic, that is a new way of life. See, what we have learned yesterday was that in our previous video, like we have learned how there was a transitional period from hunter gatherers to farmers and herders, how they become, what were the reasons. Like first reason what we have seen is that a changing environment means the climatic condition, there was a change in the climatic condition, as there was a shift from cold to relatively warm condition, which led into the growth of more grasses, which led into the multiplication of animals which eat grasses, for example deer, antelope, goat, sheep, etc. All this all these thing all these reasons made possible for the transition from a life of hunter gatherers to farmers and herders. So what happens in this topic, a new way of life, we will see how their life changes, how the life changes of this early human being, early people, when they started becoming farmers. Because when they started becoming farmers, now what will happen, the first thing is that they will be staying in one place for several years or several months, let us say, or for one season. In the starting, we can say probably they might be staying for a season or for a year or for two. We don't know exactly about that, but here what will happen, they need to stay at one place. Okay, in order to grow crops and all, they have to look after it, so they will be needing to stay at one place. So for that purpose, now a new way of life started. Otherwise, what happens before they will be, they, as they were hunters and gatherers, they don't stay in one place. Like they will be roaming from one place to another, they'll be moving from one place to another place. Why? In search of food. And their biggest challenge was to get alive and to get food for themselves. In order to live, they need food, and when they go and search for food again, they need to protect themselves from wild animal as well. But now here we will see how their life changes. Okay, how development started a little bit, how their life changes, and what were the reasons. Like we know the reasons, as they become farmers, now they need to grow crops. Okay, so that reason we are going to see under this topic, a new way of life. See, if you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. This may be for several days, weeks, months, and in some cases, years. When people begin growing plants, it means that they had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds till the grain ripened. And then the grain had to be used carefully. See, what happens when these people started living, when they learned about the naturally grown crops that were barley and rice in different parts of the subcontinent. Now they started sowing the seeds by themselves, isn't it? Which we have learned in our previous video, in our previous class. Now they started learning to plant seed, as they have observed everything, they have analyzed, now they know in which season they need to grow this crop, in which season they need to harvest, in which season they need to uh, look after this crop. Now they have analyzed everything, so they started sowing the seeds. So what happened, when you plant a seed, it will take time. It doesn't mean that you plant a seed today and next day you will be getting that grains. It will take times. It takes months, weeks, or in several cases, for several types of grain, it will take even years also. So when they started growing this crop, what happened, they started living in the same place for a longer duration of time, because they need to look after it, they need to water it, they need to drive away the animal. Because when they plant, again some birds will come and will again eat up your grains if you don't look after it. So as that's why you can see even today also there are some scarecrow statues and all are made out of sticks, and some bushes are made and they are planted, they are kept, not planted, sorry, they are kept in the middle of these areas where seeds are grown, isn't it? So in that way, here they also need to stay there and they need to look after the grain very carefully. So this is like one step. Okay, this is one step towards a settled life, we can say. Now stability started coming into their life, stability started coming into their early people. But this happens in around which year? Around 12,000 years ago. That means now they were around in the neolithic period. I hope you remember the paleolithic, mesolithic and neolithic. So here we have shifted from paleolithic, mesolithic to neolithic age. Now they started development. Okay, they started developing themselves. There is changes in their life. You will see that there will be changes in the shape and size of tools as well. Okay, now they started leading a proper life, settled life. They started making huts for themselves. Okay, so we will see all about this in our further chapter here, further pages. I hope you have understood this new way of life, this first paragraph. Now let us see the second para. What the second para says. See, we were seeing about these grains, isn't it? So what happens? As grain had to be stored, as grain has to be stored for both food and seeds, people had to think of ways of storing it. Now what happens? They have planted seeds, they have grown the grains. Now where to keep all the seeds? Where to keep, not sorry, not only, yes, they need to store the seeds as well for the next season. So apart from seed, with seed they will need to store the large amount of food, large amount of grain which they have grown for themselves. So now they started thinking ways of storing it. Now they started thinking like how we are going to store this, because they simply cannot keep into the floor without any protection, or they simply cannot keep it open. They need something to close it, isn't it, so that that grain will remain for a longer duration of time. So now let us see what they do in areas. In many areas they began making large clay pots or wove basket or dug pits into the ground. Do you think hunter gatherers would have made and used pots? Give reason for your answer. Okay. See, now what happens? In order to store the large amount of grains and foods which they have grown, they started making large clay pots. They started learning making clay pots, large clay pots, and they started even weaving baskets, also large baskets in which they can keep these grains. Or they even started digging the ground. They started making pits into the ground by digging the ground, and by keeping all the grain inside that ground. In order, in this way they have saved the grain, okay, for themselves, for their future use. And so there is a question here: do you think that hunter gatherers would have made use pots? Do you think? I see, they might be using pots in order when they started learning about cooking. When fire was invented, yes, they'll be needing pots to cook their food. You can give your answers as per your thinking in the comment section. All right. Okay. See, now what happens? So this was about the grains and plants. The other reason why they were why they were staying in that place for a longer duration of time. First was that they started growing seeds. They started growing plants and all. That is the first reason. Now the second. Now the second reason: rearing animals or storing animals. In some of your book there might be, the heading might be storing animals or rearing animals. So this is the other reason. All right. Animals multiply naturally. Animals multiply naturally. Besides, if they they are looked after carefully, they provide milk, which is an important source of food and meat whenever required. In other words, animals that are reared can be used as a store of food. That is why this heading is also termed as storing or storing. Okay, why animals are termed as storing animals? Why? The reason is that, see, when we started rearing any animals, they multiply very quickly. And in case, if you give that animal one male partner and another female partner, what happen? You will see gradually they multiply naturally. Their their younger ones, when they grow again, they'll be multiplying it more and more. In that way it becomes more. And when these animals are looked after very carefully, they started giving you milk, which you will be taking, isn't it, which will be useful for you. And all these thing become started a very important source of food, and they also become a source of meat as well whenever required. Now you don't need to roam around, or you don't need to go around to find food whenever you got hungry. Now the food is within you. See, you have stored the grain also. these people, these early people, they have started storing the grain as well as they started storing this animal also. So I hope you have understood this concept of storing animal, why they said that this animal are being stored. Okay, apart from food, okay, apart from food, what are the other things you feel that, apart from food, what are the other things that you could have been obtained from animals? What are animal used for today? See, you can think about it. Apart from food, what are the other things? See, the other things, it is, for example, the skin of the animal were used as a clothes by the early people. As we have seen, there were tools which they used to stitch clothes. That clothes are made up of animal hides, that is animal skins, isn't it? So apart from food, the animals are used for, the skins are used for, used by human beings. And for sheep, you can make wool to protect yourself from the during the winter season. And apart from it, when you tame to go dog usually uh, does a security guard purpose also, isn't it? Whenever dogs see someone new coming in your area, they'll be barking it. So these early people, they might be keeping or taming dogs for this purpose also. For example, they might be keeping the dog around in an area where they have stored their grains, large amount of grains, so that it will not be uh, it will not be attacked by any other wild animal, or so that it will remain safe. And not only grains, when to save their cattles, goats and sheep from this wild animal as well. So these are some of the reason why, some of the reasons, okay, that they could have obtained from animals apart from this as a source of food. You can also comment down the other source of other sources if you have any in the comment section. I'll see it. So this was about this uh, a new way of life. Like what, in what way there was a new way of life? They started planting seeds, they started rearing animals, and for that purpose they started living in that same place. And what happens when they started living in the same place? They will be making a permanent place there, they'll be making a permanent house for them. There will be development in that area, slowly slowly. That area, in that area, in case if there was a one house, next after a few months there'll be two three house, and after that 10 house. In that way it becomes a village, small village, a kind of small village. And that village in turns becomes city. And that in this way development start begins. Okay, so this was the beginning. And it doesn't mean that all the early people started doing farming or herding. There were still so many others who were still on this hunter gatherer practice. And there were some other groups also who were both hunter gatherers as well as farmers and herders, according to the season. Okay, according to the season, we'll see it is mentioned here in this chapter only. So now let us start our next topic, that is finding out about the first farmers and herders. Okay, now as we have seen that there was a change in a life, they started having a settled life, a new way of life started beginning. So now let us see where was these first farmers and herders found. Okay, so for this we need to look into this map which is given there, okay, in your book. You can also turn on that. Let us see the map, let us see this map very quickly, so we will understand, okay, in which part these first farmers and herders were found. Okay, see, this is the map. Okay, so here, see, there are, you can see some blue squares over there in the map. So these sites, okay, this blue side, these blue rectangular marks are the sites, okay, where archaeologists found evidences of early farmers and herders. See, let us see. First one is here, Burgaham, we will study about this. Second is Mehrgarh, Chirand. This is in the northern part, this is in the eastern part, Dauzali Hutting. And in the south you can see Hallur, okay, Payampali. These are some of the sites where archaeologists have found evidence that the first farmers and herders were living. Okay, the first found, or they, sorry, they found the first farmers and herders. Sorry for this. Okay, so those were the places where uh, archaeologists have found the sites where first farmers and hunters were found. Okay, so now let us see. Okay, see, we have already marked, isn't it? You will notice a number of blue squares. Each marks the sites from where archaeologists have found evidence of early farmers and herders. These are found all over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are the northwest. See, in the northwest, what we have found. Okay, these are found all over the subcontinent. Some of the most important ones are in the northwest, in the present day Kashmir, and in the east and south India. See, in the northwest, which site we have just marked before, Burgaham and Mehrgarh. This was in the northwestern part, which is in the Kashmir. This Burgaham is in the Kashmir now. Okay, and the other in the east, in the eastern part, where we have found, we have marked Dalhousie, Dausali and Chirant, and in the South India we have marked Payampally and Hallur. So these were some of the sites. Okay, to find out whether these sites were settlements of farmers and herders, scientists study evidence of plants and animal bones. One of the most exciting finds includes the remains of burnt grain. Okay, so when these archaeology founded excavated these sites, okay, what happens now? Scientists, they started studying, they're starting about like how uh, old are these remains. Okay, they started studying the evidence which were found out of plants and animal bones. And here the most exciting finds were the remains of burnt grain, large amount of burnt grain. See, as we have just discussed in our previous topic, a changing environment, like they started learning to store the grains. So they have stored inside the pit, they have made large clay, they have made woven basket. So accidentally these grains might have been burned, and accidentally that area might be burned, and in that way they went out from that sites, and the woman moved out from that sites, and they might be again settled into other place. So this might be some reasons, okay, which probably we think that. So the like we how we can say that, we can say that through the founds of this burnt grains. See, this may have been burned accidentally or on purpose. We don't know the reason. Okay, this may be burned accidentally or reason. There might be some other reasons also which we cannot say exactly what happened. Scientists can identify these grains, so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. They can also identify the bones of different animal. So what happens now? Scientists, they have identified. Okay, they have identified that these out of this burn grain, they identified that these crops, this number of crops, these different types of crops were grown in different type parts of this subcontinent. And they also identify the bones of different animals, like what types of animals were found during that time. And they usually found the bones of goat, pig, deer. Okay, these were some of the animals which the scientists have found as an evidence. Now let us continue. Okay, let's see the new other topic, towards the settled life. See, now what happens when they become farmers and herders? Now they will be living a settled life. So let us see here what happens here. Archaeologists have found traces of huts or houses at some sites. For instance, in Burgaham in present day Kashmir. Okay, people built pit houses which were dug into the ground with steps leading into them. So what happened? Now archaeologists have found like about this settled life. How we can say there is a proof? Okay, there is an evidence which archaeologists have found. They found traces of huts or houses in some sites. For example, here the sites is mentioned as Burgaham, which is present day, which is in Kashmir. They found that there were pit houses. Okay, pit houses means houses which are made inside the ground. Okay, like by digging the ground. And the what might be the reason? this might be like in Kashmir area, it is very cold. It is even cold even in this present situation also, in present day also. So at that time it will be more cold. We can say that it will be more colder during that time. So in order to protect themselves from this cold weather, they might have built these pit houses. All right. Archaeologists have also found cooking huts both inside and outside the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people could cook food either indoor or outdoor. Okay, another interesting fact, what they have found cooking huts. Cooking huts means chula, isn't it? The cooking chula, both inside as well as outside the house, which suggests that depending on the weather, when the weather was little favorable, when it was little warm, they might be cooking outside the home, but when the weather become harsh and colder, they might be cooking inside the home. See, this happens even in today, even today also in some many villages. What happens, we can see that chula is there inside the home as well as outside, or if there is a gas stove inside the home, there will be a chula made up of mud outside the home. And depending on the weather, if during cold weather, if they wanted to be warm, if the people wanted to be warm, or if they wanted to celebrate some events, we usually cook outside, isn't it? So same thing happens there, but in their case, they might be protecting themselves from the weather, and depending on the weather condition, they might be cooking indoor or outdoor. Stone tools stone tools were also found, okay, have been also found from many sites as well. Many of these are different from the earlier Paleolithic tools, and that is why they are called Neolithic. See, Paleolithic, I have already told you, old stone age. In this old stone age, what happens, the tools which were found were made up of wood or stone, and they were not of properly shaped. They like it were not sharp also, it was somewhat blunt. But the tools which were found during this Neolithic age, these were of proper shape and sizes, and more sophisticated, and more smaller, and more durable. All right. So these include tools that were polished to give a fine cutting edge, and mortars and pestles used for grinding grains and other plants produce. See, these tools were more polished and more fine cutting, means they were of good size and shape and with good cutting edge, more sharpers. And mortars and pestle, what does this mortars and pestle means? We use this mortars and pestle even today also in our kitchen in order to grind so many things. And during that time, these mortars were found of large size. We can say these mortars is, in Hindi you can call this as okli or kutni, isn't it? India, we can say kutni or okli. So these mortars and pestle were also found during that time, okay, and even today also these are used. See, mortars and pestle are used for grinding grains even today, several thousands years later. At the same time, tools of Paleolithic type continued to be made use and remembered. Some tools were also made of bones. Okay, these Paleolithic types of tools were also been used during this Neolithic site. Okay, Neolithic time, it doesn't mean that they have discarded all the previous tools. The previous tools were in use during this Neolithic period as well. And some of these tools were made above bone also, as we have already learned that the handles, these big bones were used to make the handles of many of various tools. See, here it is given new stone tools. You can see the picture here. Okay. Many kinds of earthen pots have also been found. These were sometimes decorated and were used for storing things. People began using pots for cooking food, especially grains like rice, wheat, and lentils, that now become an important part of the diet. Okay, see what happens, people started making, like during their free time, they started decorating the pots as well. They make clay pots, and these pots were used for cooking, especially rice. Even today also, we usually love cooking rice in pots and all. It makes more tasty, it makes the rice more tastier, isn't it? So these early people also started using these pots for cooking purpose. And these rice, wheat, barley, these are even today, these are an important part of our diet. Besides, They begin weaving clothes using different kinds of materials, for example, cotton that could now be grown. Again, evidence of cotton was also found. Okay, evidence of cotton grown was also found during this period, during this Neolithic time. Okay, so they these tools of weaving these cottons were also found. Okay, these materials were also found. Did things changes everywhere and all at once? Not quite. In many areas, men and women still continue to hunt and gather food, and elsewhere, people adopted farming and herding slowly over several thousand years. Besides, in some cases, people tried to combine these activities, doing different things during different seasons. So, what happens is that, see, we have seen that there is a transitional period from hunter gatherers to farmers and herders, but it doesn't mean that all the early people started shifting towards this settled life. Okay, there were many other men and women who still continue to hunt and gather food, who still doesn't have a settled life, who still choose to hunt and gather food instead of adopting that farming and herding. All these changes become slowly over several thousands of years. Okay, and in some cases even people try to combine both these activities. They become hunting and gatherers at one season, and they become farmers and herders at another season. So this is not a very fast and gradual process. It is a very slow and gradual process. Slowly things happened. All right, see here, a picture of pot is given, a picture of jar is given. What we can think that they have store here, they might be storing grains, or even this pot, it looks like that this might be used for cooking. Okay, let us move towards our last topic, that is a closer look, living and dying in Mehrgarh. So we will study about this Mehrgarh, which is in the Bolan Pass. Okay, which is in present day, you can say this is in Afghanistan, in between Afghanistan or Pakistan. All right, this site is located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass, which is one of the most important routes into Iran. See, why this Mehrgarh is very fertile? See, the river Indus is also there. If you remember, the river Indus is there, isn't it, in the northwestern part of the subcontinent. So here, and people usually settled near the bank of the river. So this Mehrgarh was a very fertile plain area. Okay, which is in present day near Bolan Pass, which is between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and this was a very important routes into Iran. Mehrgarh was probably one of the place where people learned to grow barley and wheat and rear sheep and goat for the first time in this area. So in this northwestern part, Mehrgarh, okay, this Mehrgarh was the first site where people first learn how to grow barley and wheat, and also to rear and sheep and goats. Means they learned that means the first farmers or herders of this area. It is one of the earliest village that we know about. See, what happens when people started leading a settled life, as I have already told you, from one house, the house will be multiplying also, isn't it? One, two, two, three, four, five, and slowly there will be a small village developed around in that area, and that village will later on develop into city, and again that, sorry, into towns, and that towns will again later develop into big cities. At these sites, many animal bones were found. Bones of wild animals such as the deer and pig, and also bones of sheep and goats were found. So in this site, in this Mehrgarh, bones of wild animals were also found. But these bones of wild animals were found deeper, okay, deeper into the ground. But in the upper layer, these bones of deer and pigs were found. What does this suggest? This suggests that while it means that bones of wild animals means, well, it means that when early people were hunters and gatherers, they will be killing this wild animal and they'll be eating. So these bones of these wild animals were found deeper inside, and this deer, pig, and sheep, goats were found little in the upper layer. All right. So let us see one more interesting thing about this Mehrgarh here. See, this is very interesting. Other finds at Mehrgarh includes remains of square or rectangular houses. Each house had four or more compartments, some of which may have been used for storage. See here, this type of house, where this type of sites were been found, okay, from this Mehrgarh, where there are compartment, there are rooms, different rooms, one, two, see, you can see here rooms, isn't it, one, two, three, four, like here you can see that four rooms are there. Similarly, like they during that time, they might be having a settled life, they are staying here in this place for a longer period of time, so different room might be used for different purpose. So, like we have today also, we have 3 to 4 rooms, isn't it? These 3 to 4 rooms is a minimal a number of rooms that is required in a house. That is, one will be kitchen, one will be sleeping room, bedroom, one will be drawing room, where we'll be sitting and enjoying and watching TV and all. So just like that, during that time also, there this evidence are been found. Okay, this is a house in Mehrgarh which look like this. Okay, and there is a question put on also, in what ways is this house similar to the one in which you live? So it is, we can say that the number of rooms are similar, and the shape also we can say it is somewhat similar. We also made a rectangular shape, isn't it? Okay, another interesting finds here. Okay, another interesting find here, let us see. See, you can see this skeleton here, and some bones of these are bones of goats. Okay, so why they are together, let us see. When people die, their relatives and friends generally pay respect to them. People look after them, perhaps in the belief that there is some form of life after death. Burial is one such arrangement. Several burial sites have been found in Mehrgarh. In one example, the dead person was buried with God, which were probably meant to serve food in the next world. See, here you can see in this picture, in one burial site. Okay, in one burial site, like a skeleton was found, but see, this burial was also in a very small area, like this this skeleton is in a bending position. And see, you can see the skeleton of goats, two goats are here. Why these two goats are kept here? People believe, because people believe that there is a life after death, so they believe that after death these goats will serve as a food for them. And we don't know whether these goats were buried alive or dead. Okay, we don't know about that, but here the people believe that these goats will serve as a means of food for this person who have died in this next world. See, a burial from Mehrgarh. Can you identify the skeleton of the goats? See, these are the skeleton of these goats. So this is little interesting, isn't it? We don't know do this in our present day. So with this, we have completed this chapter. I hope you have understood this chapter well. And in this chapter, what we have seen the transitional period from hunter gatherers to farmers, in like how they started living a settled life, how their life changes, and how this. And we have also studied about the previous early sites, the first site, that is about the Mehrgarh, and how people what kind of tools were used during these times. So with this, we'll wind up with this chapter, and I hope you have understood. And if you like my class, please hit into the like button, and please subscribe my channel. And in our next class, I'll come with this third chapter of history. Okay, the other chapter of history, that is the earliest city. See, in this chapter we will learn about the Indus Valley civilization, about the Harappan culture, and about the Harappan um, buildings and all. So all of you have a very good day, take care, and we'll see you in our next class.